السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Last week we covered the hadith on qadar, on fate, one's destiny, and the stages of the creation of mankind. And we did some of the part of the hadith on innovation, and we stopped in the slide where he says what does not come under bid'ah. So we did the hadith, the translation, and we did the introduction to the hadith, and we went into the linguistic meaning of bid'ah. So today we'll do the slide again. What does not come under bid'ah? So what I'll do, just before I do this slide, go to the slide before, and I'll just go over the linguistic meaning. I'll go over the linguistic meaning of bid'ah. Discussion on bid'ah. Linguistic meaning of bid'ah is every action that is newly introduced. So in the Arabic language, the word bid'ah, the term bid'ah, means anything that is newly introduced, meaning that practice has not been preceded before. It is a newly invented action. The technical meaning of bid'ah is to introduce an action that didn't exist during the time of Rasulullah and that which Allah and His Prophet, peace be upon him, have not permitted. According to another definition, it is to add or decrease anything from the religion after the time of the Sahaba without any permission from the Sharia. So the summary of the definition is that anything that contradicts the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of belief, action, and statement is regarded as bid'ah. So anything that contradicts the teaching of Rasulullah ﷺ, anything that contradicts the tradition of Rasulullah ﷺ in terms of belief, aqidah, action, and statement is regarded as bid'ah. Second slide. So now that we have learned the definition of bid'ah, we want to know what does not come under bid'ah. Now that is a very important aspect. That is a very important part. What does not come under bid'ah? There are many practices, there are many implementations, and which we have to know that whether it comes under bid'ah or not. Because bid'ah in itself is a very severe action for which there is warning and cautioning from the Sharia. Every action the Prophet ﷺ have not done despite the necessity being present, but not in his time. And his refraining from doing the action is due to the presence of any obstacle or there being no need to implement the action in his time. So through the example, you'll understand the definition, what is meant by Rasulullah, a certain action Rasulullah didn't do, despite the necessity being present. And him not doing the action is because of a reason. So this definition supports the case of Tarawih prayer with congregation and the gathering of the Holy Quran during the reign of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu and Usman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Because in the first scenario, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam didn't continue leading the people in Tarawih prayer because of an obstacle, and that is the fear that he may eventually become farz. So now when you look into the case of Tarawih Salah with one congregation, during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, initially he was led under one congregation. And as Rasulullah day by day, Rasulullah seen an increase in number of the people congregating. And he feared that if I continue to lead and people continue to come like this, it may become farz. So out of his compassion for his ummah, he stopped leading with jama'ah. Out of the compassion for his ummah, he didn't continue leading the people, in Tarawih, fearing that it may become farz. And once it becomes farz, his ummah, his followers will not be able to carry it out, and they will be sinful. So the obstacle was the fear that he may become first. So once Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, the illah was, he no longer remained. There was no fear of anything become first, but because Sharia is only legislated during the life of a prophet. Laws and legislation, they only come down whilst the prophet is alive. Once the prophet passes away, there are no laws, no Sharia to come down. So when Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, there was no fear of anything becoming first. So the Sahaba, they got together and they all unanimously agreed that the Tarawih Salah should be congregated and should be led under one congregation. What happened was that the Tarawih Salah during the time of the Sahaba, it was led, it was congregated separately. So in one masjid, there will not be one congregation for Tarawih. There will be so many congregations. Some in two, some in three, some in fours. So it's all scattered. So Umar radiallahu ta'ala didn't like this. He opined that it should be one jama'ah, and everyone agreed. So it was the ijma' of Sahaba. They all agreed, unanimously agreed. So this is not bid'ah. This does not come under bid'ah. Because the concept of praying Taraweeh with congregation already existed during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it was because of a reason that he stopped. And after he passed away, that reason no longer remained. So they all unanimously agreed that the Taraweeh Salah should be led under one congregation. So these do not come under bid'ah. The second example is the compilation of the Quran during the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now, that's not a bid'ah. Someone may object that during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Quran was not compiled under one copy. Why in the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala he was compiled? Now we will say during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was not a need. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't feel the need to compile the Quran. There was, Islam was within Arabia, the Quran was well preserved, so there was not that need. There was enough memorized of the Quran. So during the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, there was many wars, and in the wars, many huffaz, many memorized of the Quran participated, and they were being martyred. So the Sahaba, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he feared that we are losing so many memorized of the Quran, the teaching of the Quran may cease. So then they deemed it necessary that the Quran should be compiled for the preservation of its teaching. The third example, Usman radiallahu ta'ala. So it's not bid'ah. It was the need that they felt. And to preserve the Sharia, to protect the Sharia is an obligation. Whenever there's a fear that the deen, the knowledge of deen may fade away, we disappear, it's an obligation to preserve it. And that's what the Sahabas, they did. Similarly, is the case of Usman radiallahu. During the time of Usman radiallahu ta'ala, when the Quran was, they all united upon one dialect of the Quran, it was because of a similar reason. So during the time of Usman radiallahu ta'ala, Muslim, they conquered so many countries, so many lands. Islam was spreading, and in each region, people were taught different dialects of the Quran. As we know, the Quran was revealed upon in 7 dialects, 7 different dialects, to make it easy for the people. It was not easy for everybody to recite one dialect. So that's why, to make it easy for the people, the Quran has been revealed in 7 different dialects according to the tongue of the people. So now when Islam spread very vastly during the time of Usman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, people were being taught different dialects. So in one region, they'll be taught one dialect, in another region. So when a person of one region will meet a person of another region, and when they will recite to one another, they will start contradicting, because they were only familiar with their own dialect. So they'll start doing takfir and tadleel, and he went to us, it got very far. The arguments and disputes has gone very far, and the news reached Usman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Then he, along with other Sahaba, they united. They decided that the Quran should be everyone should be united upon the Qurayshi dialect, and that is the dialect which was revealed upon Rasulullah initially. So these do not come under bid'ah. It is to make the knowledge of deen more accessible. It is to make the knowledge of deen more accessible and to preserve the Sharia. So they are not bid'ah. They do not come under bid'ah. The second point, when there is a fear of the teaching of Islam ceasing, then the scholars of Islam can introduce ways that makes the knowledge of Islam more accessible to the people, like teaching the non-Arabs the Arabic language to understand the Quran, Sunnah, Fiqh, Aqidah, etc. Similarly, translating the Quran and other important branches of knowledge to the language of the native speakers so that they can benefit. Similarly, offering online classes and uploading talks and sessions on social media platforms. So these are not bid'ah. These are different tools that are needed to spread the message of Islam. So we need to adjust, we need to adapt according to the time to make the knowledge of the message of Islam more widespread. So these are not bid'ah, these are different tools that are needed. Also, building religious institutions like madrasa, maktab, libraries, and khanqa, spiritual mentoring center, are all newly introduced good actions which do not fall under bid'ah because they are needed for the spread of deen and its survival. Holding weekly, monthly, or annual religious programs or conferences are not bid'ah because they are systems and timetable set for the benefit of the people and has a purpose and aim behind its arrangement and stipulation. So, you know, we have weekly gathering, monthly gathering, annual gathering. They are not bid'ah. These are timetables set for the benefit of the people. Because you can't be having gathering every day. That will make the people tired. So there's hikmah, there is great wisdom behind these arrangements. So these are not bid'ah. Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala, he used to hold weekly gatherings. Every Thursdays he will hold a gathering. So these are timetables. These are systems, these numbers, there's a purpose behind these numbers. So these are not bid'ah. You know, similarly going to tabligh for 3 days, 3 days, 10 days, 40 days, 4 months, these are not bid'ah. Because the tabligh people do not say it's farz to spend 3 days every month. They do not say it's sunnah to spend 3 days every month. These are systems. Just as the way you know, when you want to do a course, there's 2 years course, 3 years course. These are systems. So these are not bid'ah. Going to tabligh for a certain number of days is not bid'ah. These are timetables. And we can also learn from the Quran as well, from the teaching of the Quran. That Allah Ta'ala told Zakaria alayhi salatu wassalam, the story behind the birth of Yahya alayhi salatu wassalam. Allah Ta'ala told Zakaria alayhi salatu wassalam to remember him for 3 days. So these are again systems. Musa alayhi salam is meeting with Allah Azza wa Jalla 40 days. So you can see these numbers and they mean something. So they are not bid'ah. Allah Ta'ala is teaching us. Imam 𝐿 bin Abd Salam said in his book Al-Qawaid that sometimes introducing an action is wajib. Sometimes to introduce something new is an obligation. For example, teaching the people nahwa, syntax, the Arabic language, so that they may understand the Quran and the teaching of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is that is a innovation that is wajib. You have to do it, without which, you know, people will, you know, the teaching of the Quran will fade away, will disappear. So he's saying this. Also, formulating usulul fiqh, you know, the principles of Sharia, compiling books on approving and disapproving narrators. Sometimes to introduce something becomes haram. For example, to hold a deviant belief, to have deviant ideology, like the corrupt sects, like the Jabariya, Qadariyya, Murji'a, Mujassama. These are different sects. regarding whom Rasulullah prophesied. So this type of introducing innovation is haram. Because that is, as we did the definition, these contradict the teaching of Rasulullah, ways of Rasulullah in terms of belief. So he was categorizing. Sheikh Izzuddin bin Abdul Salam, he's categorizing. Sometimes introducing something is a haja. You have to do it. And sometimes it's haram, like to hold a deviant belief. And also to refute the deviant sects using different ways to refute the deviant sects is not bid'ah as well. Like, the different ways, the scholars, the scholars of Aqidah combated these different sects. These are not bid'ah. The philosophical ways that they have adopted to combat these deviant sects. These are not bid'ah. Like the Ash'ari, like the Maturidiyya, the way Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah, he used different tools to combat these deviant sects, cautioning the people. So these are not bid'ah. Many a times when you open Aqidah books, you will see different ways the scholars of Aqidah have adopted in combating them. These are not bid'ah. This is completely fine. Also, forming a mazhab is not bid'ah. Like you have the mazhab of Imam Abu Hanifa, you have the mazhab of Imam Malik, you have the mazhab of Imam Shafi'i, you have the mazhab of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. These are not bid'ah. These are for the well-being of the ummah. These people, they put everything for us on the plate. The Sharia was, they have arranged the Sharia for us. The greatest contribution these Imams have done was that they arranged the Sharia for us. They have put everything for us in a booklet. So that, whenever we have any issues, you can, refer to the books and it's all there. So it's a great contribution. Forming a mazhab is not bid'ah. Following one mazhab, one particular mazhab is not bid'ah. The istihadat, the derivative skill of the Imams is not bid'ah. They extract masails, they do ijtihad, they take out this issue, this mas'ala. These are not bid'ah. These are all based on evidence. The reason why I'm touching upon these things, because now there's widespread fitna going on, confusing laymen, that this is bid'ah, don't follow this mazhab, why one mazhab? These do not come under bid'ah. In no way can they argue with us, they can convince us in any way. Our stance is strong. Next slide. The third point, that which the Ummah regards as being good and beneficial is considered likewise in Islam. So that's the third point which we will explain. It's not as straightforward. You look at the narration of Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, which is an authentic narration recorded by Imam Ahmad in his Musnad. Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, that which the believers regard as being good is also regarded as being good in the sight of Allah. And that which the believers regard as being evil is also regarded as being evil in the sight of Allah. Now, who does it refer to? This hadith is very general, but it needs explanation. It needs to be made specific. Doesn't mean like any layman, any random Muslim, if they think a certain practice is good, then, it becomes a valid practice. You can act upon it. It's not going to be bid'ah. Who is it referring to? So this is what I will explain. So he said, that which the believers regard as being good is good in the sight of Allah. And that which the believers regard as being bad is also regarded as being bad in the sight of Allah. So now, obviously, it doesn't include any layman, any Tom, Dick, and Harry. Otherwise, you will be giving refuge to bid'ah. A person, he views a bad action to be good. Would that become good? No, it's not going to become good. So it's not referring to any layman, any person. Otherwise, you'll be giving refuge to bid'ah. It includes the Sahaba, as obvious. Wherever a certain practice they want to implement, a certain practice they regard as being good, is also good in the sight of Allah. For example, the Taraweeh case, the compilation of the Quran, the examples that we've been through. He also includes the praiseworthy generations, the Khairul Qurun, the Mu'tabar, the truthful scholars, the knowledgeable scholars, in the praiseworthy generations. The Mujtahidun, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad, includes these people. Because wherever they do, it always has a basis. So what they regard, if they regard a certain practice as being good, is good in the sight of Allah. Wherever they regard as being bad, is also bad in the sight of Allah. Because they do everything based on evidence. So after their time, after the 3rd century, if there's any other scholar who regards, scholars who come after the 3rd century, if they regard something as being bad, a certain practice being bad, and it should be, if they regard a certain practice to be good and it should be implemented, and they do not have no evidence, that is deviation. So that is a clarification. So during the first 3 centuries, if the Mujtahidun, scholars of higher caliber, they regard something to be good, it will be regarded as good. If they regard something as being bad, it will be bad. And after the 3rd century, if there's anyone who regards something as being good and they do not have no evidence from the Sharia, that is deviation. So that is the fine line. Imam Shafi Rahmatullah further clarifies. He says, that which is introduced and it goes against the Quran, Sunnah, Athar, meaning the statements of the Sahaba and Tabi'un, or Ijma', consensus of the Sahaba, consensus of the Mujtahidun, then it is regarded as deviation. And that which is introduced and is good, and it does not go against any of the aforementioned religious evidences, authorities, then it is not regarded as being bad. Simple as that. So he sort of explained what we've just been through. As long as it's not contradicting the Sharia, the evidences of the Sharia, and the action in itself has to be good. Next slide. Lessons from the Hadith. Every believer should cling onto the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ in his practices, and should only seek guidance through his ways and not through any other ways, like innovative and customary ways. Simple as that. If you want to seek guidance, you only seek guidance through Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because his guidance is the best guidance, not through any other means. Committing bid'ah is a grave sin, great injustice to the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and waging war against his ways. So the innovators are waging war against the teaching of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They are newly introducing something. Every innovative action is rejected, as said by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, if anyone introduces into this affair of ours anything which does not belong to it, it is rejected. Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim. Every innovative action is misguidance. The Prophet ﷺ said, the best discourse is Allah's book. The best guidance is that which is given by Muhammad ﷺ, and the worst things are those which are newly introduced. Every innovation is misguidance. The most hated person in the sight of Allah is the innovator. The Prophet ﷺ said, the people most hateful to Allah are of 3 classes. The one who is heretical in the sacred territory, he who wants to introduce into Islam the ways of the pre-Islamic period, and he who unjustly demands the death of a Muslim to shed blood. Sahih al-Bukhari. The one who promotes and upholds innovation will bear the sin of those who follow him. Simple as that. You introduce something good, you implement something good, and people follow you, you will receive the reward. And if you implement something bad, people who follow you, not only you'll bear your own sin, you'll bear the sin of the people as well. So double punishment. The Prophet ﷺ said, if anyone invites others to follow the right guidance, his reward will be equivalent to those of the people who follow him without the reward being diminished in any respect on that account. And if anyone invites others to follow misguidance, that the sin of which he is guilty of will be equivalent to those of the people who follow him without their sins being diminished in any respect on that account. So it is a very severe matter. One is that you do something wrong, and the other is you implement it. And all the people that will be following you, the sin will be going into your account. The innovators are doomed for the hellfire. The Prophet ﷺ said, all my people will enter paradise except those who refuse. On being asked who refused, he replied, he who obeys me will enter paradise, and he who disobeys me has refused. So innovators are the ones who refuse. They're refusing to take the guidance of Rasulullah. They're refusing to take the guidance of Rasulullah. They are the ones who are refusing. And those who refuse, they are doomed for the hellfire. Next hadith. Hadith on the explicitness of that which is lawful and unlawful. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Innal halal bayyin wa innal haram bayyin wa baynahuma umurun mustabihatun la ya'lamuhunna kathirun minan nas faman ittaqa ash-shubuhat faqad istabra'a li dinihi wa 'irdihi wa man waqa'a fi ash-shubuhat waqa'a fi al-haram. كالراعي يرى حول الحمى يوشك أن يرتع فيه ألا وإن لكل ملك حمى ألا وإن حمى الله محارمه ألا وإن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب. رواه البخاري ومسلم. The translation of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, that which is lawful is clear and that which is unlawful is clear. And between the two of them are doubtful matters about which many people do not know. Thus he who avoids doubtful matters saves himself in regards to his religion and his honor, but he who falls into doubtful matters eventually falls into that which is unlawful. Like the shepherd who pastures around a sanctuary, all but grazing therein. Truly every king has a sanctuary, and truly Allah's sanctuary is his prohibitions. Truly in the body there is a morsel of flesh, which if he is healthy, the whole body will be healthy. And if he is diseased, the whole body will be diseased. Truly it is in the heart. Bukhari and Muslim. Truly it is the heart, Bukhari and Muslim. Second slide. So the hadith, that which is lawful is clear and that which is unlawful is clear, and between the two of them are doubtful matters not many people know of. Commentary. From the above we come to learn that the law of Allah consists of that which is lawful, that which is unlawful, and that which is between the two, that is classed as doubtful matters. So the definition of each of them, what is halal, what is haram, what are doubtful matters. The halal is that whose lawfulness is explicitly mentioned in the Quran by Allah Azza wa Jalla. Allah Ta'ala clearly, He mentions something to be halal, states something to be halal. For example, the verse, اليوم أحل لكم الطيبات وطعام الذين أوتوا الكتاب حل لكم وطعامكم حل لهم. Today all good pure foods have been made lawful for you. Similarly, the food of the people of the book is permissible for you, and yours is permissible for them. So halal is not just to do with food, it is to do is in everything. in dealings, financial dealings, eating, drinking, everything. It's all inclusive. But anything that is halal, anything that Allah Ta'ala mentioned as halal, they are halal. That is known as halal, something that has been made lawful. Transaction as well is halal. Allah Ta'ala has said, وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. Haram is that whose unlawfulness is explicitly mentioned in the Quran. For example, the verse حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةُ وَالدَّمُ وَلَحْمُ الْخِنْزِيرِ وَمَا أُهِلَّ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ بِهِ. The verse is like this. Clearly, Allah Ta'ala is classing something as haram. Haram is also that for which there is had. So the easiest way to determine something as haram is that which Allah Ta'ala has made haram. His Prophet, peace be upon him, has made haram. And also that for which there is a had. So the classification of haram is that for which there is had, worldly punishment carried out by the state. Or that for which there is uquba, punishment in the hereafter. Or that for which there is wa'id, warning or cautioning from the Sharia. So that which Allah Ta'ala has made haram, His Prophet, peace be upon him, made haram. That for which there is had, worldly punishment, state punishment. That for which there is uquba, punishment in the hereafter. That for which there is warning or cautioning from the Sharia. So these are classed as haram. Next slide. Now, doubtful matters. What is classed as doubtful? What is the meaning of something being doubtful? What is the meaning of something being doubtful? So halal, we know what halal is, lawful, very clear. Haram, we know what it is. What is something in the middle, which Rasulullah has placed in the middle? Doubtful matters. And he's also warning to refrain from it. So we are very curious about this, this matter. A doubtful matter in the Sharia is that which became doubtful due to the conflicting evidences in the Sharia regarding it being lawful and unlawful, or that there are no evidences indicating neither it being lawful nor unlawful. So a certain practice, a certain action becomes doubtful because of its origin. It can be traced back to its origin. So the evidences are conflicting regarding a certain action. There are two evidences. One is saying haram and the other saying halal. So now that becomes doubtful. Also, sometimes there are certain practices which doesn't have no evidence at all, whether it is halal or haram. So these are the causes of something being doubtful. When a matter has the possibility of being halal or haram, and there are no evidences from the Quran, Sunnah or Ijma indicating neither of them, whether they are halal or haram, then a mujtahid, scholars of the highest caliber, those people who can extract masail from the Quran and Sunnah, those people who occupy the highest rank, like the Imam of the four mazhab and others of the caliber, of the stature. So now what will happen? A mujtahid will investigate and research into the matter. So when there is such a scenario wherein something has the possibility of being halal or haram, and there are no evidences from the Sharia, then a mujtahid will investigate and research into the matter. He will try to look for evidences. He will try to look for for evidences. If he manages to find any evidences that indicate that it is halal or haram, then it will be regarded as halal or haram. So obviously, not everything is disclosed to the scholars. Sometimes, something is hidden, and after thorough investigation, the scholar, it comes to his knowledge. He discovers it. So similarly is the case. So if he manages to find any evidence indicating that is halal or haram, then he will be regarded as halal or haram. So it doesn't become doubtful. It no longer remains doubtful. This is the first scenario. Second scenario, if after investigating the mujtahid is unable to find any evidences for it being halal or haram, then to refrain from it is better, and that is adopting taqwa. So this is what the hadith is referring to. As such a doubtful matter which could not be solved, could not be resolved, you should refrain from such doubtful matter. So the mujtahid, after his investigation, he couldn't come to a conclusion. So you should refrain from that matter, because the problem is left unsolved. And that is taqwa, that is wara'ah. Imam Nawawi Rahmatullah said, in such a scenario, no verdict should be given. So something that has been left unsolved, you shouldn't give any verdict, like it is halal or haram or permissible or anything like anything else. Others have said to do tawaqquf. Other scholars have said, in such a scenario, just remain quiet, keep the verdict at a halt till some evidences are found. So these are scholarly topics. I just touched upon it. Inshallah, in the future, if you have intention to pursue further knowledge, the matter will be clarified to you even more. Next slide. Hadith. And between the two of them are doubtful matters about which many people do not know. Commentary. What the above statement means is that the layman and the scholars of lower caliber do not know its ruling as to what it is. But the scholars of the highest caliber, like the mujtahidun, know it through utilizing the skill of ijtihad, as I've explained. So the doubtful matters, not everyone knows of it. The layman and the scholars of lesser capacity, they would not know of it. They will not be able to solve the problem. Only the scholars of the highest caliber, as I've explained before, they will investigate and they will come to know of it. So very few people are gifted. From this hadith, we know that these problems could only be solved by a small number of people, and they are the chosen scholars, the very qualified scholars. So they will be able to solve these doubtful matters. Some could be solved and some could not be solved. So that's what Rasulullah means, that many people do not know. The layman would not know, and many scholars would not know. Only very few number of chosen, highly qualified scholars, through the investigation, through the skill of ijtihad, derivative skill, they will be able to know. This is the meaning. Hadith, he who avoids doubtful matters saves himself in regard to his religion and his honor. What is the meaning? That whosoever avoids from doubtful matters, he saves himself in regards to his religion and his honor. Him saving himself in regards to his religion means that he will be saved from the reprimanding of the Sharia. He does something doubtful, obviously he's going to be reprimanded by the Sharia. So he will be safe from that. He'll be saved from going against the teaching of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, refrain from doubtful matters. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, refrain from doubtful matters, and he refrained. He will be safe from being criticized. Whereas if he was to do, then he is criticized because he has not followed the teaching of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the meaning of him saving himself in regards to his religion. Meaning he followed the sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, followed the guidance of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in doubtful matters, in how to go about with doubtful matters. So he's safe from the criticism of Sharia. What does it mean by him serving himself in regards to his honor? Meaning from the criticism of the people. So he does something doubtful, people will criticize him. If he doesn't do, he'll be safe from criticism. And criticism leads to one losing the dignity. Criticism leads to one losing the honor. So he will be safe from that. If he's safe from people's criticism, he has saved his honor and his dignity. Honor and dignity is a such great ni'mat of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Once you lose it, you can't get it back. It's like time. Few things you don't want to lose. Time, you can't win it back. Honor, Allah has given to you as a gift. Once you lose it, it's very hard to get it back. So that's why you should not take your honor, your dignity for granted. You should carry yourself in a certain way that you do not lose your respect, you do not lose your dignity. You shouldn't do anything suspicious that that leads to people doubting you. You will lose your honor, even though it may be an assumption. But why are you doing this suspicious act in the first place? So you should keep yourself away from suspicious actions, from doubtful actions that people do not assume, and that is your responsibility. Next slide. But he who falls into doubtful matters eventually falls into that which is unlawful. What's the meaning of this passage? The meaning of the above is that whosoever indulges in doubtful matters excessively, it will be easy for him to indulge in more greater doubtful matters till he eventually indulges in haram intentionally. Simple as that. Once you are excessive in doing a doubtful matter, for you to do something greater, it's not going to be difficult for you, because your mind and your and your nafs has been programmed towards that way. It'll be easy. A person drinks alcohol, is easy for him to commit all the sins. So the way every good deed has a connection, that one good leads to another good, similarly, every evil act has a connection, that one evil will lead to another evil. So a doubtful matter is evil. So if you're so used to doing this doubtful practice, it is not impossible to think that it would not lead to something haram. That's the meaning. You'll eventually, gradually indulge in haram, intentionally. In other words, one lesser evil leads to another greater evil. Someone indulging in doubtful matters intentionally shows her lack of taqwa and less regard for the deen. We'll leave it till here. Inshallah, we will continue from the next slide next week, inshallah. If anyone has any questions, they can ask regarding any slide. Can ask in the chat option, or you can also ask on WhatsApp. You should be open to asking questions, because at the end of the day, it's for your benefit. Nothing should escape your knowledge. Anything that is being taught in the lesson, you shouldn't escape. You shouldn't be deprived from that. Anything that is not clear, you can ask questions, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka.